Hello and welcome to this review of my Cherry G80-3000 HFMGB. This keyboard is not exactly the same one as the one I originally reviewed, but it's the exact same model. The original is actually the keyboard I traded away for my beloved Acer KB101A, which, especially considering I didn't pay anything for that trade, is definitely one of my best deals to date. This one, which I got from the recycling center for 50p, is in slightly better condition, but more importantly, it came with the original box, which is this one here, and even the original manual. Let me give you a quick example of what's in it.
Die IBM-MF-kompatiblen Tastaturen können mit kompatiblen AT- und PS2-Systemen verwendet werden. Die Verbindung zwischen Rechner und Tastatur erfolgt über einen Standardanschluss DIN oder einer Mini-DIN-Stecker. Mit Hilfe verstellbarer Standfüße kann eine bediengerechte Arbeitsposition eingestellt werden.
The G80-3000 is basically the standard full-size Cherry keyboard, and they made these in more versions than I can possibly count. They started making these in 1988 and they're still making them one of the oldest keyboards still in production. That said, despite the many versions, this is one of the best versions in my opinion. Now, I know I'm often known as the guy that hates Cherry, but I don't hate this thing at all, actually. It does have a few flaws I'll get to in a bit, but I'd say that overall this is not a bad board. Let's start with one of the two main negatives though, which is the build quality. This is pretty normal for Cherry keyboards, almost all of which are built out of spit and cardboard. It's basically a thin plastic shell clamped together with two plastic clips and a PCB floating around in it. The PCB isn't secured or held in place by anything, so reassembling it is harder than it should be, and there are no screws to keep the case together. Some people have cited the lack of screws as an advantage because this way you can disassemble the keyboard without using tools, but the clips can break off, and although the clips on this model are rather large and pretty easy to open, many other Cherry models use smaller clips that are more deeply situated, so you still need a screwdriver to open them. In fact, those are harder to open than with just screws. Basically, my motto is that where it regards build quality, plastic just isn't an optimal choice. A firmer chassis or metal case and the use of screws would have been big improvements here. It would also have been nice if they'd done something with a lock light sticker, because the lights are round but the slots are narrow, so it looks very cheaply done, which it probably is. It does, however, come with Cherry's nice rubber padded flip out feet which prevent slipping, a nice touch that I've always liked. The cable is a rather standard PS2 cable with coils in it. I think the modern ones no longer have the coils and they use a USB plug instead, but the old ones are pretty much all like this. It's pretty okay really. This particular one is from 1998, and here is the model sticker of the keyboard. Unlike most of my Cherries, which are made in the Czech Republic, this one is genuine German manufacture. The good thing about these H models is that the keycaps are really nice, and they're one of the things Cherry got rid of at some point in the 90s, unfortunately. They're thick ABS caps with double-shot lettering, which is the most high-quality type of keycap printing available. With these, basically the lettering is a separate piece of plastic inside the keycap, so the letters are impossible to wear off, and they can be made very sharp and bold. Compare that to their more modern keycaps like their lasered PBT caps, and you can see that although the PBT caps don't shine up or yellow, the lettering looks much less attractive. The keycaps of this board, which are often called OG Cherry double shots, are without a doubt the most sought after bit of the whole keyboard. This particular one doesn't have the Cherry logo on the case like some of them do, but the ones that did tended to have them lasered on rather cheaply. And then it's on to the switches, which are Cherry MX Blue, their standard clicky switches. They make a clicky sound, and they have a tactile bump, but interestingly they are much more tactile than the standard tactile switches, Cherry MX Brown. The tactile bump is both stronger and sharper, which leads to a much more pleasant and much more defined tactile feel. A similar thing also goes for Alpes Switches, interestingly. Both are due to the way the clicker impacts the operation of the tactile mechanism, although even tactile Alpes are still much more tactile than clicky Cherries. It's honestly not a bad feel overall, and to be honest, of all the stock Cherry switches, I like these one by far the best. So there you go, these are my favorite Cherry switches. The one thing I dislike about these the most, and the main other disadvantage of the board in my opinion, is the sound, however. Because they use a plastic clicker jacket instead of a metal clicker like most other clicky switch designs do, the sound is very shallow and high-pitched, and is reasonably loud to boot. These ones are somewhat worn, so the sound isn't as annoyingly loud anymore as it used to be, but you can still clearly hear what I'm on about here. In fact, now that I have the Acer out anyway, let's do a quick Alpes v Cherry sound showdown. It's not the absolute loudest I know in terms of decibels, but because it's so high-pitched, it's a lot more ear-piercing than many other switches are, even if those are louder in terms of decibels. My friends have complained about it when playing online, actually. It's probably the worst sound of any clicky switch design I know to date, although some of the Cherry clones make an even louder and more obnoxious noise, like Utamus and Gatorons. The bad sound might have something to do with the fact that these switches don't appear to have been designed with a clicky noise in mind. It seems like more of an afterthought. If you look at the patent for these switches, there is no mention of a clicky noise or auditory feedback like there is in the patents for all the other clicky switches. Instead, it appears the switch was designed just to cause hysteresis, which is the difference between actuation and resetting of the switch. The hysteresis is somewhat large, and one of the reasons gamers are said not to like these switches as much as MX Black or Brown or Red, which don't have this. I think it's not the end of the world though, I've seen much worse. MX Blues are rather light for clicky switches at 60 grams of force, so if you don't like the stiffness of Alps or buckling springs, then MX Blues might be a good alternative. I would recommend the similarly light SMK Monterey switches over these, which feel crisper and more sharply tactile, and of course they have a better sound. Montereys are actually one of my favorite switch designs as it happens. Overall, they're pretty okay switches though, I like them. Of course, particularly in the clicky switch department, the competition is killingly good, so there are tons of designs way better than this, and the noise is just kinda crap, but as an upgrade to rubber domes, I'd say MX Blue offers the greatest improvement of the Cherry MX range in general. The board then, overall, is really not bad. Great keycaps and nice switches is good enough for a mechanical, I'd say. Of course, some people like linear, some people like tactile, and some like clicky, but for me, MX Blue really stands out of the range as the one I'd go for. MX Clear also has its advantages, and in a future video I'll finally divulge what I really think of those, but personally, I definitely prefer Blue. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.